our understanding of the sense of smell is perhaps a little bit less well developed than our understanding of the sense of sight or vision. So what I'm going to do is give you a little bit of a sense of how important I think this sense is. And with smell, the way smell works in the brain is as follows. It resides mostly in this system of the brain. It's a series of parts of the brain known as the limbic system. And these are some of the parts. I'm going to just focus on the ones that are most important. You can see there that on the bottom left, we've got the olfactory bulb, which does a lot of the work in converting the stuff that goes in as scents into brain activity, so we can interpret the smell. So when you wake up in the morning to a breakfast or a coffee, the olfactory bulb is working overtime at that point. It's also communicating with another very important area known as the hippocampus on the top right there that's circled. The hippocampus, that word actually means seahorse in Greek, and the hippocampus looks like a little seahorse. That's the shape of it. And it's responsible for memory. Most of what goes on in memory goes on in the hippocampus. We store memories there. We convert an experience today. If you remember anything from my talk, that's because your hippocampus, your seahorse, was working overtime. And the olfactory bulb is very strongly connected to the hippocampus. There's a very strong series of bundles between them. And what that means is that our memory for smells is extremely strong. I'm sure this has happened to some of you before, where you're walking along, someone walks by you with a particular perfume or cologne, you haven't smelled that for maybe 20 years, and instantly takes you back to that time when you smelled it the first time. It's a distinctive scent that you haven't smelled in a long time, but that doesn't often happen quite so powerfully. We don't get the same nostalgia with vision as we do with the sense of smell. And I'm going to show you a quick experiment that shows exactly how powerful smells can be in a marketing context or in a business context. So researchers ran this experiment, and what they did was they wanted to see whether they could make a product more memorable by using the sense of smell. So they had these three very generic-looking pencils, and they had three groups of people, and they assigned each person to one of the groups. So they randomly came in, they took them and they assigned them to a group. And what they did was they had them sit down with the pencil, look at it, use it, write with it, experience it as you would if you were trying any product. But what they had done before the experiment was one of three things to the pencil. They either did nothing, they didn't change the pencil, it didn't have a special scent. For some of the people, they dipped it in pine oil. Apparently that's a very standard smell for wood to have. It's just they made that smell stronger. So they dipped it in pine oil, it had a stronger scent, and then they presented this pencil that had been dipped in pine oil to the people in that group. The third group, they dipped it in tea tree oil, which is a very unusual scent for wood. It doesn't often have that smell. So they wanted to see whether both having a smell and also the unusualness of the smell might influence how much people would feel good about using the pencil, remember it. So what they did was they waited 2 weeks after these participants had used the pencils. So time ticked, 2 weeks elapsed, and then they asked them a whole lot of questions about the pencil. Do you remember the brand? Tell us what it was like. And they scored these responses for how accurate they were. So how well did people remember this pencil? What they found was that people, as you'd expect, it's 2 weeks, it's a long time, it's not a particularly memorable product. They don't do very well when they don't have a smell to associate with the pencil. They only recall about 26% of the information. When the pencil was dipped in the standard scent, it had a smell, but it wasn't that unusual, they remembered much more. So a scent is a good thing. But look how much more they remembered when the scent was unusual. So the basic take-home here is that it's great to use the scents that we think people will like. You know, a nice-smelling product, using coffee beans is great, using chocolate is great. These are good things to do, but if everyone else is doing it as well, if it's standard and if it's fairly run-of-the-mill, the key here, the trick, is to use something that's a bit different. Because if you want people to associate the distinct experience of either the product or interacting with the booth or whatever it may be with that smell, it needs to be a smell that doesn't have a lot of other associations. So that's why it's so powerful when you're thrown back into the past by some sensory experience. It's because it's an unusual smell that you haven't encountered for a long time that is very strongly tied in your mind to that earlier experience. So that's a very, very important part of that relationship.